There's one reason why you see African Americans in varied shades of brown and black. And that was not done because there was a love affair and it was voluntarily done. It's because they were property of the master. Therefore, he could do anything he wanted to do to you because you had no rights. Enjoy my beautiful outfit. Isn't it glorious? My hair is covered because it was against the law for black women's hair to not be covered.
Aren't you glad your ancestors were slaves? Otherwise, you'd be living in Africa.
Africa's a beautiful country. Thank you for that.
I've been there.
Thank you for that. Beautiful country. Beautiful country.
And
any chance you get to be with a black woman, you will take it. And your ancestor did too.
Why don't you spend your time and energy volunteering to VA hospital?
It was about, it was against the law for us to learn to read and write. What's the fear in that? You may be educated. The slaves worked 6 days a week, some 7, most 6 days a week, from before sun was up until after sun was down. And even at that time, when they were back in the cabins, they had to shuck corn and do other tasks that could be done without being in the fields. The whippings and the beatings were unmerciful. Like one proud slave owner said, him and his overseer said, there are 2 kinds of good niggers. One's working hard in the field and a dead nigger. Those were your 2 kinds. That's what they felt about my people. Yet you look at all the major buildings in this country that were built, the White House, probably this building too, were all built by the hands of slaves. Because you know what? They were great craftsmen. And when they came from Africa and those other shithole countries, they brought craftsmanship and knowledge with them. They knew about irrigation. They lived in the desert, and to grow crops, they had to know how to get water to the crops to irrigate the crops. The Civil War was about slavery. Yet and still, it does not matter. The African American, from the Revolutionary War to every war this country has been in, African Americans have been amongst the first people to sign up and go to battle to fight. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the Civil War. One thing General Grant knew, and he made known, in order for the North to win that battle, they were gonna have to let those free slaves fight. And they did. Very interesting to me, though, however, is the fact that when a lot of the Southern gentlemen, you want to call them that, they went off to war, they took one of their slaves with them because somebody got to do his laundry. Somebody's got to prepare his food because it's beneath him to do. So you can buy into the lie that the Civil War was not about slavery if you want to, but the truth is the truth. And it is statues like this and other monuments that don't want you to know the truth. That's why right here in the state of Texas, when it comes to talking about the textbooks, they don't want to say slaves, they want to say unpaid workers. Why are they afraid of the truth? They were slaves. They were treated as less than human beings. But I bet you one thing, if they'd have been able to do heart transplants, kidney transplants, lung transplants, way back then, if there was a blood type that mixed theirs, that I gladly took that slave's kidney. With pride. Quickly. Anybody got any questions?
Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised and grew up in Taylor, Texas. I have, as a child in segregation, had to use the separate water fountain in this building. That's not new to me. I lived that. I lived going to desegregated schools, and my first day in school, getting run into and being told, nigga, get out of my way. Actually, when this statue went up, she was born in 1910, so she was 6 years old. And I'm sure it served its purpose on her. To say, nigga, Stay in your place. Stay in your place. You're not as good as me. Now you can work for me. You can clean my house. You can raise my babies. And part of her life as a maid, she walked about 8 miles to work one way, summer, spring, winter, or fall, in a pair of sandals, because those were the only shoes she owned. And she did everything for $2.50 a week. And had no complaints. Because she had a family she had to feed. And it was important to her, like it was important to her mother, even though she only had a 3rd grade education, that we had education. If it was no more than a high school education, if it was no more than the ability to know how to read and write. Now, she wrote and she read on a 3rd grade level, but she could count her money. And she knows if she was being cheated or not. So I stand here for her too. And I stand here for Aaron 9. And I stand here for Henrietta 9. And George 9. And Aaron 9. And William 9. And James 9. And Johnny Amos. I stand here for all my slave ancestors. You see, because first they had to be strong enough to make it through the Middle Passage. They had to be strong enough to come across the ocean in the belly of a slave ship where they was packed in there like sardines, where they were had to live in urine and pee and death and vomit and everything, but they survived. And they survived the horrors that they met and had to deal with once they got off that slave ship. And they continue to live and survive and thrive in the worst of conditions for the sake of their families.
Where's your husband?
To make sure that those of us that came after them could have a better life. Angry black woman. That's me. Power to the people.
Well, all this happened in the past, so should we just let the past be the past and move forward together?
No. And here's why. Which, some folks ain't gonna like them about the second. That's okay. They like nothing else I said. I've lived outside of the United States because my husband was in the military. As a matter of fact, pretty much all the men in my family served at some point in time in the U.S. military. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. But I know that in living in Holland, that one thing that the Dutch and even the Germans and definitely the English make sure they do is they have times of silence because of what happened to the Jewish people. Because if you don't teach, and if you try to forget about it and look over it, what you've done before, you're doomed to do again. And unfortunately, it looks like we're on that track. I pray to my God that we're not. I pray to my God that we're not. No, we can't move on. We have to know. That's how you learn. If you tell a child, don't touch the oven that's hot. But sometimes that child don't get that lesson and they touch the outside that oven and their hand get burned, and now they know that it's hot. So no, we have to teach.
Several people said to me when I had at the lecture, they said, this is history, and why are you trying to erase history?
Not erase history, correct history, true history. It needs to be told. True history needs to be told. You see, because there's a little birdie back here talking, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not out here claiming, but she is making an assumption that I'm not educated. She is making an assumption that I don't know history. But I want her to keep assuming that. I want her to keep walking and believing that. Because as long as she is ignorant to the fact that I am educated and of history and what I know, the better off it is for me.
what's a better place for this statue?
A cemetery or a museum. It's you know, it was put up to intimidate my ancestors. I'm not talking about my slave over there. I'm talking about my grandmother, my mother. They was there. It was put up to intimidate them, to make them stay in their place and let them know who was in charge. We're not afraid of this no more. And it's a lie. And it needs to go.
Are you saying this wasn't just a nice, naive, sentimental celebration of the Confederate soldiers?
No, not at all. It was not. It is not. It is not. It is not. You see, part of what's going on now, I'm sorry, what did you say, Chuck?
Most people think that that's just a simple, naive memorial to people who fought for their beliefs.
That's because those people weren't bent over on their back and beat down and had to work as slaves. If that's what their family went through, then that's what that is. But that's not what my family went through. And it was put here to tell them, stay in your place. And see, a lot of the rise on racism and the racist attacks and things that are going on right now, it's an angry reaction to an election in 2008. How dare a black man be president of the United States of America? Well, I say this. If you didn't want the black man to be the president, then just look at the white half of it. Ignore the black half of it. So that's why a lot of the racist stuff is happening today. It's because that happened. And they don't seem to be getting up with that. Let's go. To remind them of who was in charge. And it was not us.
The county courthouse.
It was not us. We were stolen from a country and brought here to work for free and treated as less than human beings, as little children. The way the slaves were fed, they were fed in a trough, like a hog trough. The mush was mixed up with pot liquor and cornmeal and put in a hog trough. And all the little children were sent there to that trough. Sometimes with a wooden spoon, but mostly with their hands.
Correct.
And that's how they were to feed themselves.
We have
children
up here
from the age up to about 12 were not given shoes. Girls and boys wore what they call shirts out. Long shirts. The boys did not get pants until they were about the age of between 12 and 14. Nor did they have shoes. And that's the way the young children were treated. Raped. Not only were the women raped, but the children were raped. The men were raped. There's one reason why you see African Americans in varied shades of brown and black. And that was not done because there was a love affair and it was voluntarily done. It's because they were property of the master. Therefore, he could do anything he wanted to do to you because you had no rights. Enjoy my beautiful outfit. Isn't it glorious? My hair is covered because it was against the law for black women's hair to not be covered.
Aren't you glad your ancestors were slaves? Otherwise, you'd be living in Africa.
Africa's a beautiful country. Thank you for that.
I've been there.
Thank you for that. Beautiful country. Beautiful country.
You spend your
and any
time.
chance you get to be with a black woman, you will take it. And your ancestor did too.
Why don't you spend your time and energy volunteering at the VA hospital?
It was about, it was against the law for us to learn to read and write. What's the fear in that? You may be educated. The slaves worked 6 days a week. Some 7, most 6 days a week. From before sun was up until after sun was down. And even at that time, when they were back in the cabins, they had to shuck corn and do other tasks that could be done without being in the fields. The whippings and the beatings were unmerciful. Like one proud slave owner said, him and his overseer said, there are two kinds of good niggers. One's working hard in the field and a dead nigger. Those were your two kinds. That's what they felt about my people. Yet you look at all the major buildings in this country that were built, the White House, probably this building too, were all built by the hands of slaves. Because you know what? They were great craftsmen. And when they came from Africa and those other shithole countries, they brought craftsmanship and knowledge with them. They knew about irrigation. They lived in the desert, and to grow crops, they had to know how to get water to the crops to irrigate the crops. The Civil War was about slavery. Yet and still, it does not matter. The African American, from the Revolutionary War to every war this country has been in, African Americans have been amongst the first people to sign up and go to battle to fight. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, the Korean War, the Civil War. One thing General Grant knew, and he made known, in order for the North to win that battle, they were going to have to let those free slaves fight. And they did. Very interesting to me, though, however, is the fact that when a lot of the Southern gentlemen, you want to call them that, they went off to war, they took one of their slaves with them because somebody got to do his laundry. Somebody's got to prepare his food because it's beneath him to do. So you can buy into the lie that the Civil War was not about slavery if you want to, but the truth is the truth. And it is statues like this and other monuments that don't want you to know the truth. That's why right here in the state of Texas, when it comes to talking about the textbooks, they don't want to say slaves, they want to say unpaid workers. Why are they afraid of the truth? They were slaves. They were treated as less than human beings. But I bet you one thing, if they'd have been able to do heart transplants, kidney transplants, lung transplants, way back then, if there was a blood type that mixed theirs, they'd have gladly took that slave's kidney. With pride. Quickly. Anybody got any questions?
Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised and grew up in Taylor, Texas. I have, as a child in segregation, had to use the separate water fountain in this building. That's not new to me. I lived that. I lived going to desegregated schools, and my first day in school getting run into and being told, nigga, get out of my way.
Oh, I understand.
If anybody would have told me in 2019,
come on, people,
that my grandchildren
we're missing
could
opportunities.
potentially be up against some of the same things, the oppression that I grew up with back in the 50s and 60s, I would not have believed it. You could not have made me
But this
believe
is
it.
the Williamson County, so we need
But let me let you know, let me know something, that if you don't know, here's the secret.
the county.
If America is anybody's
we want to
country,
move it to the Confederate
it
Cemetery.
is first
And if
the
you just
Native
call on the
Americans
back,
who were not
Bill the
lost.
Bell, you live
When Christopher
and
Columbus
your
found
precinct
America,
person, we're making an effort.
and second to that, it is the African Americans who were the free labor
The courthouse is a
that
place of
built
equality
this
and
country
justice.
and made all these rich families to this day
Remember
that are
history,
still
but don't
having
follow
money
a
from what their
fallen
ancestors made and still being rich. This is my country.
Well, thank you
This
for
is
stopping.
our country.
This is
And
my
it will
country.
always be my
This is
country.
all of our
And it is my grandchildren's
Too bad you don't
country.
act like
And
it.
I will be damned if my grandchildren have to go through the oppression that I had to endure as a child of segregation. It won't happen. The lost cause, it's a lost cause. Cause you're lost. Get over it. Just like y'all want to tell us about the election of 2016 and Hillary losing, y'all lost. The Confederacy lost. You lost that war. because it was an unjust war. It was an inhumane war. On Sundays, when the slaves didn't have to work, some that didn't, and they had the church services, so the master or whatever preacher he had come in, and they made the slaves come to hear the preacher preach. The preacher's sermon was, niggas, obey your master. Work hard for your master. Don't be lazy. Don't try to run away. Obey the master and so that you can go to heaven. Notice, it's so you can go to heaven. Because the only decent life, the only time you will not be oppressed, beaten, raped, starved, is when you die. But until you die, you get to experience hell right here on earth. You wanna say I'm an angry black woman? I wear that with pride. I am an angry black woman.
One who was against Dr.
I am an angry black woman because my family has been spit on, beaten, raped, mistreated, generation after generation. And it stops now. It stops now.
Oh, the kettle black. Amazing.
It stops now. Just as I'm being told that there's a permit needed to be here. Well, when the police tell me I have to go, I'll move from this spot, but that don't mean I can't go across the street and say what I have to say. Because I have as much right to be at this Capitol building as anybody else. And that is given to me through the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and all of these other big flowery documents that were written that said all men were created equal and entitled to certain inalienable rights. Therefore, I am a citizen. I am entitled to all the rights as any other citizen or basic human being. Yes, I'm an angry black woman. I wear it with pride. We shall overcome. This statue may not go down today. It may not go down in the next 5 or 10 years. But the folks that want to call themselves Christians yet don't know what loving their brother is about, what does not know what it's like to feed their brother when their brother is hungry, that does not know what it's about to clothe their brother if they're naked. Real Christians know what that means. And real Christians do not enslave human beings.
Nobody even supports the slavery.
So,
that would be like people going to the Coliseum want to throw people to the lions.
there are places for statues like this. Museums. Cemeteries. Notice the placement. It's on the south side. Because we want to give hope that the South is going to rise again. South ain't rising again. We will not be enslaved. We will not be treated like second-class citizens. We will not bow down because of the color of our skin. And we will teach our children the truth. And we will teach our children that they are human beings. And we will teach our children that that Constitution gives them the same rights as every other American citizen. The lost cause, it's lost. It's over. You see, part of the scary thing about letting the slaves learn how to read, or black folks with education in general, is because they might be successful. How long was it that black people were making inventions that everybody used, including the stoplight? Yet they couldn't get a patent on it because you wasn't allowed to get a patent. Because you weren't allowed to. Why could you not? You couldn't own a house and have property because you were not allowed to. on the things that America was built on, America turned a blind eye for the almighty dollar. Game's over. That's over. That is over. So, I ask that each of you teach your children and your grandchildren and make sure that this newer generation knows the truth. Make sure they know the truth. Don't let them carry on this lie or believe the untruth. Because I can guarantee you right now, if they needed a kidney and they was my blood type and they could have it, they would take that kidney today. If it meant the difference between life and death, they wouldn't turn down that kidney.
How does it make you feel to see this kind of a statue that was erected during Jim Crow to intimidate blacks still on the courthouse steps?
It's still trying to do what the Lost Cause was all about. Tell a lie. Tell a lie. To honor brutal slave owners. Because they do not want to accept the fact that the South lost the war. That their free labor was gone. I mean, you look at it, why did other amendments have to be done? After the war was over and the slave was freed, then they come up with the 14th Amendment and these other amendments that said if you were loitering, you could have been a freed slave could have been going from one job to another or from a job home. But if there was a white former slave owner that needed somebody picking that cotton or that tobacco or whatever they needed that free labor. That person was then arrested and forced to go work for this person free of charge. Still slavery. Still slavery. Just under a different name. But you know what? In spite of the fact that they've tried to keep their necks, by they, I mean the racists, have tried to keep their feet on our necks. Not only have we survived, but we've managed to thrive. And many of us, my ancestors, when they were free, when they came out of slavery, they were very skilled labor, not skilled that the master taught them, skills they learned and brought from the motherland and taught generation after generation. They were able to buy some land deep off in the woods because you were only safe. You were only safe if you could get far away from a lot of white people. Deep off in the woods, the worst soil possible for farming. My great-great-grandfather and his three brothers together bought 200 acres of land. And they established a freedmen's community. And they had a post office and a general store and a bank and a blacksmith. That you see, that was what my great-great-grandfather was skilled at. He was skilled at being a blacksmith. And even as a slave, people brought their wagons and horses from miles around to the Williamson farm where he was enslaved to get him to shoe their horses and fix their wagons and do all the types of jobs that you need a blacksmith to do. He was skilled in basket weaving, which a lot of people don't know. The slave didn't always have the sack. They started off picking cotton and putting it in baskets. My great-great-grandfather was skilled at weaving these baskets. He was also very skilled in making mattresses. They call shuck mattresses, made out of cornstalk shucks. Let's just step back for a minute and talk about these beautiful homes that the slaves got to live in. These raggedy log or piece of log wooden shacks, which is where they had to live. and it could be however many was in a family. It could be 5 in that shack. It could be 8 in that shack, and they all had to sleep on the floor. And 95% of the time, the floor was a dirt floor that they had to sweep and clean so that they could, that was the floor in their shack. And what they ate was beans, some greens, sometimes some masters. I guess that's when you had a good master. You got to have a little garden. You got to have a little garden. And in that garden, as you grew your vegetables, the slaves got to keep a little bit of what they were supposed to have been able to grow for themselves, but the master got first pick. And the slave got what was left over. There's nothing beautiful about slavery. Nothing. My people are human beings, just like every other person that walks around on this earth right now. And according to our Constitution, according to the Declaration of Independence, according to all the historical documents, they are entitled to the same rights as every other American. And it's really sad that even to this day, they are trying to be denied that. This gentleman here, and I'm using gentleman as a term loosely, has been telling me, shoe fly, this my spot. You can't be here. Last I heard, I was free. I was born free, and I'll die free.